because you should walk out of there feeling like you gave 30 plus years of your life to something you feel really good about. And most of us still feel good about the work, but we feel really bad about the path.
You need a true and warrior. This chief here, he did away with that word.
Yeah,
he told people, he didn't want warriors or the warrior mindset. Total crap.
Yeah.
Yet, that's what they wanted in Uvalde. I know that wasn't SAPD, but when you have somebody, let's say somebody even laid siege on the department, they wanted the warriors to come in there and save their ass. Total bullshit. But you have to have that leader, because then they'll follow you.
They will follow you.
You know what I mean?
It's like MBV, right? It's management by vendetta. And that's the way these guys do business. If you ever supervise one of them and disciplined them, or if you ever supervise them and just simply held them to normal expectations, you want to work here, you're going to do your job. And at some point, these guys use that template we talked about earlier, wind up getting up into the ranks, following a different path, wind up getting appointed. They can never let it go. And so all of these people that if at one point in their minds crossed them or saw the world differently than they do, they never get those assignments. They never get put where they're going to do the best good for the department.
Blu Wolf Podcast.
This episode of the Blu Wolf Podcast is brought to you by Blue Line Professional Inspections. Check out blinspections.net for all your inspection needs, including home inspection, wood-destroying insect inspection, sewer drain inspection, and on-site water treatment inspection. Blue Line is a first responder-owned business.
So tell me about, we talked about the Citizens Review Board, the internal affairs process, and how that almost, the way we've described it, talk about it, it almost seems like it's just that sleight of hand. Look, we're doing something about it. We got all these people involved, a lot of people because they spend their time on it, right? We have the sworn board, which is comprised of how many?
So it's a deputy chief, a captain, a lieutenant, a sergeant, a detective, and 2 patrol officers, right? And that's the board that really gets together. It's an advisory board to the chief's appointment, right? The chief's appointment. So you got to keep that in mind. They report to the chief, the deputy chief, right? The chief, chairman of the board, but they're also appointed by the chief. So what they do is always going to be heavily scrutinized, right? So if you're going to be in line with the chief, you got to have some big ones that sit there and say, well, I totally disagree with that. I think that's BS, right? Most of them are going to be kind of cautious in the way they move, right? So they about 3 contracts ago, they started it small, got a little bigger, and they have a citizens advisory board. And the citizens advisory board is really appointed by city council, but the list is created by the city manager, which is really the deputy city manager. You were talking about her earlier. And then these people that are in good standing in the community get appointed. So it's a dual purpose board. This is where the smoke and mirrors comes in. And the people that do it really mean to do well, right? These are citizens that really want to be involved in their police department and make sure their police department is doing what they should be doing. There's no slight on it. But this is the dirty little secret, is that they have no real position. It's advisory only. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of times they'll recommend, because that's really all they are, is that they'll recommend discipline, which is either varies from what the sworn board does, lesser or more. But if it happens to be one of those things where it's in that chief's core group and they often more, the chief always has, and it says it right in the contract, you can look it up anytime you want, the chief is in no way compelled or any obligation to adhere to this. So the chief just arbitrarily dismisses it. It's really not open. It's not open to any open records requests. So it's completely latent.
Yeah.
It just looks good.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, it's like if the chief, we're talking about our department, but it really could apply to any department. You guys like to drop words like transparency all the time, but it's really not transparent. You should let people see what you're doing, right? And I know this is where the union will probably have a little bit of an issue because they like it too. Like we were part of the union, right? And if it benefits you, you like it. If it doesn't benefit you, don't like it, right? But at the end of the day, if you're doing it the right way, then it shouldn't be a big deal.
Well, I'm of the belief, and you may and disagree with it, but I retired as a detective. I wasn't even a supervisor, but we had to wear body cams when they came out. And any kind of police action you took, you had to turn that body cam on.
Yeah.
patrolmen are getting in trouble for not doing that, or turning it off, or muting it too soon. So I believe that if you're going to conduct police business, whether it be meetings or conversations, turn your friggin' body cam on. And not that you can't go on the side and talk about things, because they'll end up being circumvented in some crap.
So I probably wouldn't necessarily agree with that position, because if you have body cams on every meeting, that somebody's going to get it. All body cams are privy to open records with that, and then somebody will take a tidbit or a snippet of something and turn it into something that it isn't. But when we're talking about the I'm advocating for the civilian part of this board. Because if they are there and they have a say, then their say should have some meaning. And it should have enough meaning to where people know what they recommended, so that when the chief overrides them or disregards it, then someone should eventually have to answer for it. That's the part I'm talking about. So it completely eliminates any legitimacy of it.
Yeah.
It just looks good.
Yeah.
And yeah, because really, if they're appointed by city council and the list comes from the city manager, I don't know that they don't do this, but I'm pretty sure they don't do this. Why aren't they meeting with this chief's civilian advisory action board to tell me what's going on? Well, they don't really want to do that because, like you mentioned too, the chief does exactly what Maria wants and what every councilman needs him to do. So why are we going to do that?
And I'll say this too, because you just mentioned it, not to go off on a tangent, but you talk about this last appointment to deputy chief. How much of a hand do you think she had in that decision?
I don't think she had much of a hand in it.
Really?
I think that decision came straight from the chief of police. They're all really supposed to be from the chief of police, right? But mainly from the chief of staff. And because he's part of that group, and where I think the deputy city manager had a huge say in it was when he appointed one of the assistant chiefs.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it was no secret at the time.
That's why I'm asking.
Yeah,
because she's got her hand. I'm hearing she has her hand in what's going on.
Well, she approves everything.
Yeah, but I'm hearing, because my other side of the family is fire. And I'm hearing she's got her hand in their upper management.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And we're fixing to see, and stay tuned, folks, because when you see who this next fire chief is, then you're going to understand what I mean. Because I have a strong feeling of what it's going to look like.
Right.
I won't reveal, or go any further than that.
Yeah. It's like a cliffhanger, right?
Yeah.
We'll be right back.
You're going to see what I mean. There's no need to sound like we're just beating that dead horse in a sense. So it's also something to go, hey, I was right? So you can go, Ben, Willie Davis, right?
So I think they're all on the same page, right? Because there's a lot of people that are working in that environment that are in positions to be in a regular contact with Maria, or Eric Walsh for that matter, right? Or council people. And so once you start to do that, again, you start to ingratiate yourself into these circles. Everybody, I was talking about that one that got an appointment most recently. He'd been taking the chief hunting for years. So what do you think that means, right? And so
means he's doing the right thing.
Right, but on that one appointment to assistant chief, it was very common knowledge that the chief wanted this other guy. Maria wanted this other woman, and it got a little chippy between them. Well, Maria ultimately put her foot down, and this was common knowledge, right? And
she does the heavy hammer.
Yeah, she got the assistant chief. Well, the very next assistant chief job went to the other guy, right? So I think that's really where the crux of it. I think they're kind of always on the same page. Is this kind of rubber stamp? I think this one, what we're talking about now, I think she wanted her. She needed a female up there. She wanted a female up there.
So she got a position to satisfy that she's virtual. She's
20 virtuous.
Yeah.
What'd you say? 30?
The 30 by 30 plan. Yeah, that's part of that. And that needs to be mentioned because we're seeing that. We just saw it with the Secret Service. Great example. If you couldn't have called a strike better of what's coming, what happened in the failed assassination of Donald Trump and the failed...
We can still say President Trump.
Yeah. Let's say hopefully the next president, but...
Former president.
But the failed planning of his protection had a lot to do, because they're calling... And now it wasn't just me at the time, but calling her a DEI hire, Kimberly Cheadle, and she shit the bed, as we would expect. And then we saw the ones surrounding President Trump, were DEI hires, no doubt, and they failed too. They looked horrible at the time. I won't go too far into that. So we've said a lot. We're talking about, how they're not being as transparent as they should be. We've already mentioned one example, and it's a really good example, and it's fresh because a lot of the people know it. That happened, has it been a year now? With the Southside.
It was last summer, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be a year now where, and it's in the news, where 3 officers, just a real quick synopsis, got a call for a crime in progress. This woman was, it's kind of we call it criminal mischief, but was damaging the fire alarms in the apartment complex. The officers show up. She flees from them, and I believe she fled too easily from them because they didn't go hands on her. I saw the video. She was already acting weird.
Right.
But because of discipline, fear, these officers aren't going hands-on right away. Well, that's good. So she flees from them and goes into her apartment, and they don't go after her in her apartment, but when they start kind of pushing their way, get closer, and I do believe they were saying it to me too soon, but I do believe she was going through some mental issue. But at the time, you think you're dealing with a crime suspect,
right?
It wasn't a call for a welfare check or anything. And then she comes at him with a hammer. They're saying that it looked like she was throwing the hammer, or going to throw the hammer at him, and they used deadly force on her. And the issue with that, and there's so many details that we don't know. And on face value, yeah, it looks bad. But the unfairness that we saw in that situation was that from the start of the incident, 16 hours later, these officers, that warrants had been walked, they were arrested and charged in the same day.
And convicted in public opinion.
Convicted of public opinion, because the narrative started, the political part, through our own administration. Yeah. She was obviously going through a mental episode. Well, you're looking at hindsight. You're already too late on your assessment that you're using an advantage you have now that these guys didn't have at that time. Hindsight is 20/20. But I go even further. Now, you wrote arrest warrants, applied for arrest warrants and things like that. You probably do it faster than most. But I'm going to be generous that they had to have made this decision. I'm going to give them 6 hours into the situation.
Yes.
Right? Because they did, no doubt, conferred with
the way that usually happens when there's officer-involved shooting or something like that. So the shooting team commander will come out. That's the homicide lieutenant or the homicide captain. They'll come out, the deputy chief over that area, the chief of staff. Everybody's there, right? It's like one big marshmallow fry. Right? Or whatever you call it. And so they're there and they're all powwowing. And usually the way that conversation goes, which is a great example of this, what we're talking about, you can beat the rap, but you can't beat the ride, because it hasn't gone, right? It hasn't really gone. It hasn't gone to criminal court, right? And at some point, that'll go through its process. I have my own opinions on should that be a deadly force situation or not, like you do, but that's
lots of officers.
Yeah, but that's not even really for this. But what it is, that's a perfect example of how they gather up. They realize this is a shitstorm coming, and it's brewing fast, and they're just saying, what can we do to
What shitstorm? What is the shitstorm?
The shitstorm is the political part, the public part of it, the press and the media pushing on it. That made national news, right? It's on Fox, it's on
not anything having to do with the law necessarily. No. We're not even there yet.
It's the pressure and the perception that the police department is not in line with the expectations of whatever the citizens of this particular world.
The way of thinking.
And so the decisions are made very quickly. And so it came like this. So what do you think we should do? Somebody says, hey, you know what? Do we have enough to arrest him? And I'm sure that the homicide commander was probably saying, I think we're too early for that. I'm not throwing him under, but I haven't talked to him. Leave him alone, right?
Yeah.
But any rational commander would say, I think it's too early for that. We don't even really know what's going on. And then you have probably the chiefest.
I'm going to tell you right now, I have no doubt when they made this decision, the shooting, the crime scene was still being processed.
Oh, yeah.
Shooting team was still on scene.
Yeah, and so that decision was made, hey, you know what, let's go ahead and walk warrants on him. It gives us an opportunity for the chief to get out there and say, hey, we have walked warrants on this. We've consulted with the district attorney.
As the DA is going to go, what? We're going to screw over some police officers?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's go.
And it makes them look good. It makes everybody look good. But it doesn't make, they don't take into account the officers, the stress, what we were talking about. I don't know if we have time for that councilman's comment, but, these people now don't have any real, any income. How do I pay my mortgage? How do I have to, how do I take care of my kids? How do I put food on the table? They don't think about the embarrassment to the family, the wives, the parents, the children. They just make these things carte blanche because, and this is a point I really wanted to make, the chief of police only has 3 distinctive management style. These are the only things. And when we were talking about leadership, if you look on the police department, it says leadership team, right? Well, leadership is a buzzword. It's like synergy or core component. It's like pivot, right? That word drives me. We're going to pivot. Like, we're just going to fix it. And so, but the first one, and we were talking about it right earlier, is just sustainability, right? Self-preservation. That's his full goal, number 1 goal, right? I want to keep my job. I want to be the chief of police, number 1. Number 2 is always going to be take care of our own, right? They take care of their own. Those that are friends of friends of friends in that group always get a different level of discipline. They're usually the ones that will get the written counseling, the written reprimands, because none of that gets reported to the public. It's all internal, hush-hush, no real documentation of it. Sits in there 201 for a while, then it disappears. How? Who knows? But the third one is probably really, and we can almost kind of make a buzzword at this point because it's create one, right? Be a part of it. The corporate problem, but it's it's like MBV, right? It's management by vendetta. And that's the way these guys do business. If you ever supervise one of them and disciplined it, or if you ever supervise them and just simply held them to normal expectations, you want to work here, you're going to do your job. And at some point, these guys use that template we talked about earlier, wind up getting up into the ranks, following a different path, wind up getting appointed. They can never let it go. And so all of these people that if at one point in their minds crossed them or saw the world differently than they do, they never get those assignments. They never get put where they're going to do the best good for the department. Like if you want a homicide commander, who do I want? I want a guy who was a homicide detective.
That's why these guys end up playing chess.
Yeah.
Because you have to be a few steps ahead. If I make this move, am I going to be able to get over here?
Yeah.
Or am I going to get squashed?
Right. You remember we had a case not too long ago, a situation where a guy missed a gun on a search, and then the guy went to the mags.
Oh, yeah.
Or the county, and then he shot himself. And, those are like critical moves, right? And the officer was 100% wrong in missing that gun. There's no way around it, right? Searching 101, you search it. If Willie takes my prisoner, I search it, then Willie searches it.
Yeah.
Like it's 2 hands or better. It's like clearing a room, right? I clear it, you clear. But, on that thing, and when the officers got arrested on South, and you don't see these people, if you're a real leader, like a leadership team or leader, then you go to those roll calls and you talk to those officers and say, I know this is hard for you. These were your friends. But this has to happen. Yeah. They don't do that.
No.
They don't go. They're not shown. So they're not having any real influence on the people. So they don't even talk about it. So then the captains that are out there are left to do it, but they don't even know what to say because they were never included in the loop. So it's not even a captain's meeting to, hey, I want you to talk to your people about the expectations and reiterate the need, right, to search. It just never gets talked about.
I'm going to go a little further with that, not just not knowing how and what to say. But one thing, and I hate it, and I hate it, but I know I've done this before, and you probably have too, you might relate to it, is that when other officers see them, the spotlight is on them for that situation, they automatically in their mind go into self-preservation mode also.
Yeah.
On its face value, it doesn't look good. And then they'll go, well, I wouldn't do that. And then with all the rumors floating around, because they'll end up talking to each other, and whether it be personally or text nowadays or whatever, and they'll derive something like, yeah, well, fuck that, the dumbasses.
Yeah.
Without knowing the full story. So they kind of like, and they don't want to hear anymore. You know what I mean? Because now that I'm one of my retirement gigs, and I told you, is I'm working as an expert with defense attorney Nicola Hudd and Jay Norton.
Yeah.
I'm
great attorneys, by the way.
I believe 100%. But I have learned that I need to go, wait a minute, I'm seeing the snapshot. I need to see the description and everything else. And you learn from that. That's why I encourage the officers that are watching this, don't be so quick to judge and condemn these poor guys, because trust me, when the shoe's on your foot, people do that to you, and even some of your friends will leave you out, and you just feel lonely.
Yeah, and you can be the person that is judging and be the person that is judged in a matter of microseconds.
Sure.
You know, on the police department, you can be validated, anointed, or forsaken. It just depends on what the weather's like.
You can go from a hero to a zero.
It happens super quick. And, you know, I know you were talking about the case where the street crimes guys, you know, were wound up going through a criminal case and then it was dismissed and there was no big to do about it. The chief didn't come out and says, hey, we're happy to have our guys back. They were exonerating. Or the union coming out saying, hey, you know what? This happens. It gets a lot of press, but we're here to say we're happy to see them back. We're standing with them. That never happens. And all of those things.
I'm pissed about that.
Yeah.
I'm going to do a podcast on that situation. He's talking about the street crimes guys, officers, Thomas Villarreal and Carlos Castro. And some of it is just my time to get to it. But I think it's important because you just said that. These guys were left out to dry and hung out for political purposes. We were kind of running out of time, but I wanted to describe a little bit more of that. But it's a great example, and you'll see the correlation of what we're talking about with that case.
But I was telling you this story, and I just feel like I got to get it in. We have like 2 more minutes. So when we're talking about how these kind of management, again, not leadership, these kind of management techniques kind of create this toxicity, right? It's just a bad culture. It doesn't just affect the men and women at that patrol level or detective. I can tell you with certainty, looking right at whoever's looking right back at us, that within the last 15 years, there hasn't been maybe 1 or 2 people at the highest level of this organization. So I'm talking about all the captains, but more importantly, I'm talking about all the deputy chiefs and assistant chiefs. Maybe 1 or 2 that have left feeling good about it. Everybody leaves this place feeling like, what a shit show.
Yeah.
Literally, what a shit show.
Good point.
And I'll tell you this story, and I got permission to tell this story. It was a very one of the most respected deputy chiefs in the entire time I've been on the police department. And he was humble, he stayed grounded, he took after his troops, he did what he had to do at that level. But he always spoke up and was never really one in that group, but he was respected by that group. So it's kind of a weird deal. He kind of played neutral and accelerated when he had to, decelerated when he had to.
He was one of those guys that, like, don't piss him off.
Yeah, don't piss him off. But very respected, right?
Yeah.
Level-headed, very objective, smart. When he left the police department, they put together this little plaque. It was almost an insult. The way it works, if you're on a patrol shift, 30, 40 guys and women, and someone in the shift makes detective, they all chip in and they get him a nice little thing, working at South B or Prue Road or West, and now you're moving on to detective.
Got him gut.
Yeah. And so some people got him gut. And so when this deputy chief, this super tenured, super respected deputy chief leaves, they must have forgot about it. And the chief gives him a little trinket. It's like a little wood particle board piece of shit. And he gets it. He never says a word. And again, I got permission to say it. And he leaves, and I get a video. And he takes it and he sets it out there, loads up a shotgun with double-out buck and shoots it. And so it sounds funny.
And that dude I would have never expected something like that.
No, but it sounds funny. But, it's pathetically funny. Because you should walk out of there feeling like you gave 30 plus years of your life to something you feel really good about. And most of us still feel good about the work, but we feel really bad about the path. And he was at this highest level, and that's just one example. There was another guy that got one too, literally walked out the building in the same dumpster. The dumpster in the parking lot, threw in the dumpster. That's how little reverence this guy has. Yeah. That's a strong statement to make. Like you don't have anyone. You have like the not so fabulous 5 that are around you, but everyone else has no legitimate value and respect for you. And I'm talking about the executive levels of the police department, not just the men and women of the police department. And then you get all these media people always taking shots at those guys through low-hanging fruit, where they put it on KSAT talking about these officers did this, but they never really talk about what's happening at the highest level of the police department. And that's probably by design, but because the culture of the police department is important. People feel good and do a good job when they really respect who they're working for. And I'll just
that goes to even we always get these idiots that say you guys are getting too militaristic. You gotta. That's how our academies run. ranks. We have a rank structure that's kind of like militaristic. It's all these crybabies. But the adage is your men will not die for you if they don't respect you.
Yeah.
They won't risk their lives in that sense. And we have lacked, and I don't know who the last one was really, and really in my career, but you need a true and warrior. The chief, this chief here, he did away with that word.
Yeah,
he told people, he didn't want warriors or the warrior mindset. Total crap.
Yeah.
Yet, that's what they wanted in Uvalde. I know that wasn't SAPD, but when you have somebody, let's say somebody even laid siege on the department, they wanted the warriors to come in there and save their ass. Total bullshit. But you have to have that leader, because then they'll follow you.
They will follow you.
You know what I mean? And I'm going to say this about myself. I experienced that just as a detective. If I was leading the mission, these guys trusted me that I knew what I was doing and how I structured it. And they'd follow you because they also knew I did the work. I've done it before. However small, scene scenario it was, but it showed it.
Men and women on the police department are incredibly intuitive. They know the deal. They're not dumb.
They're smart.
They know who's in their corner. They know who's working with them or for them, and they also know where they are in the pecking order. And that's the shame. And you were talking about they won't die for the leaders. The men and the women in this community, including 55 or 56 of them, have died for the community. And those guys and women should be celebrated. And we should always kind of end by saying thank you to all of them for what they did and their families have given up. But, man, thank you for having me on, Willie. I appreciate it, man. I hope that people realize we're just not coming off here firing shots across the bow. We really care about the men and women of the police department. They should be represented and they should have a voice. And, there's a lot of people out there that respect you and appreciate you every day, and we're two over.
The cool thing about this is that, and we probably will not know, but the ones that are pissed off about this are the ones we're talking about.
Yeah.
And the ones that we're speaking for are the ones that are going to feel good that we're actually saying something.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you doing that and being here again, and I think it's good information. And I hope, I'm not even going to say I hope it didn't offend anybody, but I know it's going to offend somebody. But I hope that people know and we structured it well enough to where you understand where we're coming from and what we're talking about. It's a real problem, because if you start paying attention, if you don't notice it, you're not really paying attention. Right? You just don't, or you don't have enough time on to see it.
Yeah.
But it's there, and we're not trying to throw a black cloud over the police department. We still love this department. We have a lot of good friends at work, still are working at this department. We feel for them and what's going on. That's why we're doing what we're doing. That's why I started this podcast. I think we have the credibility to give our opinions and the knowledge, because we have done the work to explain it well enough. But I will say this, and it's going to be a strong statement, that upper management, whether not just in the police department, people need to get bold enough, grow a pair of balls if you're a male, or if you obviously already have them, but use them and step up for these good men and women that are risking their lives. Because this isn't about losing a sale. It's about possibly making a mistake because they're in fear of retribution, some bullshit, whether it be an administrative policy violation or, violation of the law. And we've seen violations of the law come about which truly weren't, only to be found that they weren't 4 years later. Quit putting these good men and women through this unnecessary stress. Be fair, no doubt. I'm not saying people don't deserve discipline, but treat them fairly and don't play politics with their lives. But I appreciate y'all listening, and stay safe.